Cowabunga, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Technodrome Tales, a 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles rewatch podcast. I'm your host, the real Brad Bell, coming from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, and tonight we have a very special episode of the Technodrome Tales because it is one of our in-between seasons episode where we are going to talk about / review / reminisce about a Ninja Turtles movie. And of course, first up is the all-time classic, the original 1990 film. So why don't I go ahead and introduce my esteemed co-host tonight. And we're joined by a very special guest. I'm going to introduce her first, Emily from the War and Beast podcast, who Kendall has been kind enough to invite on for us, Miss Emily Rowley. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from British Columbia.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan. So when Kendall told me he was doing a Turtles podcast, I told him I had to be at least on one episode.
Oh yeah, you're welcome on anytime. If there's an in particular episode of the 87 show you ever want to hop on here for one of the later movie episodes, just let Kendall know. So before we get to my other two main co-hosts here, since we kind of don't know your general flavor for this property, real quick, who's your favorite turtle?
Leonardo.
Why?
Because he's the leader and he's blue and like he's just like disciplined and like my favorite Turtles TV series is a 2003 cartoon. And that one, yeah, like he's disciplined and honorable and like a true ninja, and like I just think he's cool.
That's awesome. You answered my next question, which is what's your favorite incarnation? You mentioned the 03 was your favorite show. Is the 03 show your favorite incarnation overall, or is it one of the films?
It's okay. Well, maybe it's a 1990 film. It's pretty close, but the 2003 cartoon I feel is. Like I've read a lot of the original Kevin Eastman and Laird comics, but they're a little dark, and they also don't characterize the Turtles that well. And the 2003 cartoon is an adaptation of the comics, like almost perfect adaptation that makes things a little bit lighter though, and characterizes the Turtles a little bit more to be closer to their 86 counterparts.
If we ever get to the 03 show, we'll definitely have to have you on because that's my Turtles blind spot. I mean, I've watched pretty much everything, even Next Mutation and the Nick show.
Next Mutation.
And that voice, of course, is my other co-host, not just a partner, but a friend, the one, the only, Jerry Reed, also known as
Barbecue 17. What's up, everybody?
Jerry, how are you doing this evening?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to talk about this movie. I have prepared a Dr. Manhattan styled soliloquy, you might say, to talk about this film. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Right.
I'm absolutely ready. As long as you keep your pants on, I'll be good.
It's March 30th, 1990. I'm standing in line. I am dressed like Raphael. I am so excited. I vomit in line.
Oh.
My dad takes me home, gives me something cold to drink, and tells me to rest. We come back for a later showing.
And the rest is history, and that is a true story.
Jerry, I literally was so excited that I threw up in line.
That's amazing.
That was kind of a recurring theme for me, like especially for birthdays until about 1994 or something. I just got sick. I was so excited, but I was so excited for this movie. This was one of the first movies I actually can remember, like me actually being excited for it and knowing it was coming. So I love this movie. It holds up so well, even today, and I am so excited to be with y'all talking about this film.
Yeah, same here. One of my first movie experiences. And let me go ahead and introduce my favorite Buckeye. The one, the only, Kendall Hallman. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing real well. Now, listeners, I do want to point out. I think this was before we started. As soon as Brad found out that I was in Columbus, he asked me if I'm a Buckeye football fan. Which I mean, you're required to be a little bit in Columbus, but not, it's not really my thing. The first thing he asked Emily when he found out she was from Canada was whether she was a hockey fan.
I'm sorry, I make sports assumptions and stereotypes.
Kind of like what you were saying, where you have to be at least a little bit of a Buckeye fan. I am like a little bit of a Canucks fan, but
that's what I was gonna ask. So you're a Canucks person? That's even worse. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it's Vancouver. It's Vancouver's team, and that's like the closest city to me. So I grew up with the Canucks, and my brother's a big hockey fan, and my dad is. I was like, yeah, it's cool, but I never really got into it like they did.
I really kind of enjoyed just experience. We have a team here, the Carolina Hurricanes. They've actually won a Stanley Cup, but hockey is a very niche thing in the South. And if you're near Raleigh, we're near Charlotte, but if you're near Raleigh, it's very popular. So it was really cool just seeing how Canadians view it, kind of how we do the National Football League. But this isn't an NHL podcast. This is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast. So let's go ahead and get into this very special edition of the Technodrome Tales. Let's talk about what Jerry has already shared with us, kind of our initial experiences with this film. And we'll start with our guest, Emily. What is the first memory you have of this film, whether it was watching it on the FHE VHS tape or it was seeing it in theaters?
I was a little too young to see it in theaters, I think. I was born in 88, so I would have been 2 years old. So even if I did go to theaters, I would not remember that. But I had the VHS tape. I had all the different Turtles movies on VHS, and we would watch it like constantly. I was a huge Turtles kid. We had like tons of the toys. We had like the 2 sets of the sewer set. We like combined together to make a super big sewer set. Like we adored Turtles. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I guess because like my dad, we weren't like a super rich family or anything, but I guess my dad must have had a little bit extra money, and when he bought a set, he bought 2, one for me, one for my brother, because you couldn't just buy one for one of the kids, I guess.
That was the same way we were.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, it was not my favorite Turtles movie. The second one was, but as I've grown older, I adore this movie. It's like, it's if not my favorite movie ever made, it's up there.
Yeah, and that's kind of a running theme with Turtle fans. I think a lot of us enjoyed the second one more as kids, but looking back, we like that film still, but we have a much greater appreciation for this original, which is a classic now. Kendall, what about you? What was your first experience with this 1990 classic?
So you mentioned the VHS tape, and now I regret that when I rewatched it that I watched it on DVD and not VHS. Because
I watched it on Blu-ray, so
I'm pretty sure. Well, I have a VHS player like that I hooked up last year so that I could watch on VHS to prove everybody that the special edition is better. So I regret it, but I remember like specifically. I remember that VHS tape. It had a commercial at the beginning for must
Pizza
have been.
Hut.
Or it was Pizza Hut. Okay, yeah, and the song went, I play right field. It's important, you got to know how to catch. You got to know how to throw. Something, just watching the dandelions grow. And I love that song as a
That's as
kid.
Close as I came to playing sports as a kid.
It was a baseball commercial, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But for Pizza Hut, although Domino's is in the movie.
I was gonna say, it's interesting. We did not have that ad in front of our film. That's interesting. I remember in front of Turtles 2, we had an ad for like that what is it, Hulk Hogan movie called like Commandos.
Urban Commando.
Yeah, Suburban Commando, that's it, yeah.
Urban Commando, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that VHS tape vividly. It had the black sleeve with the turtles kind of outlined in green, and then it had the turtle faces on the little sticker, kind of in silhouette. My experience with this film is it was one of the first. It was not the first movie I ever saw, and I'm 30 years old. I was 3. My first memory of a film was seeing RoboCop 2 at the drive-in.
Oh my gosh!
And I probably had a great impact on the kind of quality person I ended up becoming. But it at least started my love for cinema. And this movie, my birthday was March 3rd. This movie came out in March of 90. So it was kind of like my birthday / biggest event of my life up until that point. And Jerry will know, do you remember the old Carmike, Jerry and Shelby? It was shut down probably when you moved to town.
Yeah, I think it was probably gone by the time I got here because I've only ever seen movies in the new Carmike.
Well, there were two
Or
Carmikes.
something else.
AMC bought Carmike.
AMC, yeah.
Yeah, there were two Carmikes in our town, hometown. One was at the mall. It was very nice. It was the newer of the Carmikes. And then there was the old one that had been there since like the early 80s, late 70s that my parents had went to. We called that one the dump. So we would always call and see, where is the film playing? Is it going to be at the mall, the very nice theater at the time, or is it going to be at the dump? I remember my mom saying this one was going to be at the dump. But it was pretty nice when I got out there, lines of kids. They had a Leonardo dressed up out there, just a massive event. And if you were a child of the 1990s, this was an event type film that helped define your childhood. So, Kendall, I didn't mean to cut you off, my friend.
Oh.
Did you want to interject there? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. I just the rest of the story because it's I mean these films where it was about the VHS tapes. My memory was I owned as a kid. I owned the first and third film, and then the second film I had an elderly next door neighbor who owned the second film, and I would like once a week go over to his house and borrow it. So I
want to come over and watch some Ninja Turtles?
Yeah.
No.
This one I owned on VHS, and definitely it was one of those that I just watched over and over and over as a kid.
So what has made this is a film that's obviously stuck with us. We're all adults and we still have a great affinity for this film. Obviously that has a lot to do with our love for geekdom and geek properties in general. But Jerry, what do you think has made this film just last the test of time for Turtles fans?
I think out of at least every live action version of the Ninja Turtles, there is something about the costumes, about the puppets used in this film, because that there's actual people in the costumes, but the heads are animatronic. You watch this movie, and I am one of those folks that think there is no substitute for a practical effect when you're dealing with a character or a creature of some kind. And I mean, you watch this movie, and every time I watch it, I am sort of transported back that this is really what I see in my mind whenever I think of the Ninja Turtles. These characters always look so real to me, as opposed to, some of the later films in this series, the costumes weren't as good. I'm not a huge fan of the look of the Michael Bay versions of these characters, but whenever I see the costumes from this movie, I just think they look amazing. That this is as close to the Ninja Turtles in real life as I think I am able to envision.
You can't see me, but I've been nodding that whole time.
So what's made it so endearing for you, Emily?
It's okay, like hands down, it's just a really good film for starters. Like, it's got good acting, it's got great lines that are super quotable, it's got good action, it's got good lighting, and like the suits are beautiful. They're gorgeous. Like, looking at it today on my Blu-ray, the textures on the skin, like it's magnificent. And like, and then on top of that, I'm a huge Turtles fan. And if you're a Turtles fan, I'm gonna say you couldn't love this movie. It's got great themes of family and fatherhood and rage and trying to hold that in. And like, it speaks to me as a person, definitely.
What about for you, Kendall?
So I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think it's very notable that this was like the Jim Henson or whatever that did those costumes, and that makes a big difference. I think in principle, I don't have a problem with CGI. I do think that in this case they were able to achieve something that that looked so real that you probably today's technology you couldn't achieve that in CGI. But the two things about the film that I think really put it over the edge for me is one, how well it sticks to it clearly goes back to the original source material.
Oh yeah.
Story is so similar
and really tells that story so well. And then also I've got this I do this other podcast that with Emily called the War and Beast podcast, and we've been talking about Michael Bay Transformers movies a lot because there's a new movie coming out, and we did a bonus episode, and those movies are roughly 8 hours long. This movie was 90 minutes long. There's not a movie that needed to be cut out. Like it's a very tight movie, and I think that's something that's a craft that has been lost, especially in the summer blockbuster type films. That this, because this shouldn't have been. I think this is a classic. This, it's just really well done overall. And part of that is keeping it tight, and that made a big difference for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what's made this film very endearing over time is that it initially, as kids, it brought the turtles to life as far as their characteristics very well. Everybody was full fleshed out. We talk about the theme song and how that kind of does a better job of explaining who the turtles are than the animated show in the 80s, at least, does of showing the characteristics of the 4 individual turtles. Whereas this movie, throughout the course of the film, really fleshes out these characters. And initially, I think that's what drew me to it. And just like Emily said, the visual aesthetic, talking about just the textures and just kind of the sweat you see on these Jim Henson outfits, it just works so well. Somebody mentioned the lighting. I think it was Emily as well. That's very well done in this film. And as far as it lasting the test of time, it matches up so well with some of those grittier aspects of the original Eastman and Laird comic, while still giving you the full-on characteristics of the turtles. Now, when we review films on our other podcast, the Confirmed Epic podcast, I always like to run through some stats. So here's some stats of this film. It was released March 30th, 1990. It was 93 minutes. It was made for $13.5 million. Ended up grossing $202 million on a
13.5 million. Yeah, that's
it's the highest grossing independent film ever. At least it was for a long time.
Yeah, is directed by Steve Barron, who is primarily known, at least from my understanding, my brief research, as being more of a music video director for bands such as ZZ Top prior to this, which is incredible that he was able to pull off some of the lighting and shots and whatnot that we mentioned earlier. Here's what surprised me as I did some research for this film. It is that it only received, of course, this film predated this system, but it receives a 40% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. In comparison, the Michael Bay 2014 film received a 22% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I know Rotten Tomatoes isn't the end-all be-all, but for cinema fans like myself, I do use it as somewhat of a gauge. I don't agree with this rating at all. Are any of y'all surprised in the least that this is way off?
Not really. My thought with Rotten Tomatoes when it comes to older movies, if you're gonna go back and review an older movie, people are either going back to confirm that something's a classic, or they're trying to kind of pick on something that's a well-known movie. I mean, there's not a lot of reasons to go back and revisit an older film for if you're a critic that's on Rotten Tomatoes. So my guess is it's people being able to go back and sort of bash the movie or be critical about it.
I mean, people hate everything. We did a bit on the War and Beast where I was reading all the negative reviews of Wizard of Oz on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh my god, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't a good bit. It went on too long, and also, yeah, I mean, I consistently disagree with stuff on Rotten Tomatoes. I think the problem there's two things. First of all, Rotten Tomatoes does its thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
It's really hard to.
Yep.
It's really hard to. That doesn't seem like the best system. And then also, there was a pretty viral video of the guy with the glasses a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
Really tearing apart the Ninja Turtles movies from the 90s, and people that watch that guy's videos are the same kind of people probably who would like Jerry said, specifically seek out music to give a thumbs down to it.
I'm a pretty big nostalgia critic fan. At least I used to be back in the day. And I people have to learn to take those videos with a grain of salt. Like he's just making jokes. Like he reviewed that. Like he's done a few videos where it's like, this is my real feelings about the thing. And I think he likes this movie. Like,
yeah,
right. Yeah. I even remember watching it, and at the tail end, he kind of backpedaled on it to a degree, but still, like, people like being told what to think.
People,
and,
absolutely.
And there is also like a group think of this movie.
People also really criticized this movie a lot of feeling that it was pretty violent. And when we were talking about the things we like about this movie, one of the things after everybody else had spoken, I was thinking about too, and I think Emily has echoed this. This movie is very much like what you expect from a Ninja Turtles movie as a kid. But I feel it's a movie that as I get older, I'm not trying to argue this is like a cinematic, gem, but as you get older, there really are deeper layers to this movie. It's not overly silly.
Yeah.
At all.
It's not this,
I wouldn't classify it as campy.
Not at all. I remember as a kid, my dad would actually watch this a lot. Like a lot of times my dad would put this on and stuff and be sitting there watching it too. And, I didn't think about much now, but going back, I'm like, this is still it's a pretty decent action movie. It's it's got some really good martial arts, set pieces and scenes in it. It actually has a lot of depth to it as well. But the other side of the coin is if you have a movie like that's viewed as marketed towards kids, you have lots of critics who go back and try to talk about how violent it is. And I did pull up the Rotten Tomatoes thing, and someone said about, a lot of the things are overt glorification of violence is still at the crux of this stunt film. So,
oh God, it's a Ninja Turtles. What do you think's going to happen?
What troubles me about Ninja Turtles is it's basically an exploitation movie aimed at young children.
Oh my God.
Jay Boyar of the Orlando Sentinel. Again, you have lots of people coming back that are trying to, I don't know, kind of nanny state this movie, like retroactively. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to find out like what's wrong with millennials or something. And,
Well, I think most Turtle fans are in agreement that this is an epic film. So let's get into the film a little bit more instead of what people on Rotten Tomatoes think about it, pretentious critics.
Well, you brought it up, Brad.
I know. I love to mention Rotten Tomatoes. I do, Jerry. All right, go ahead, Emily. You were going to say something.
I just think it's interesting about the violence thing. There's a fun fact is that Jim Henson almost didn't do this movie because he thought it'd be too violent. He had to be convinced to work on the movie. And after the movie was made and he was driving by a movie theater, seeing all these kids waiting to go see this movie, he was like, I did a good thing. Like this, he was very glad he worked on that.
It's really interesting. And I know in the early 90s, there was the same issue with Power Rangers, but like the fighting, it's not, like to me it's very much fantasy violence. The violence is fantasy violence. It's
Raphael didn't spear anybody in the kidney or anything.
Exactly.
Right. Nobody used the only time anybody actually used a weapon was when April hits the guy in the head with a staff.
Well, and Leo he like nicks Shredder.
Does he? Yeah, I guess he did. Like he did the. I just barely cut your arm a little bit. Yeah,
That's another reason I like him. He's the best fighter. Like he's the one guy who hits Shredder. I love that.
And also, the other thing they did that probably curved some of the graphic violence, but sort of implied more direct violence, is there were several scenes where the first time you see the turtles, they make it's pitch black, and then also in the sewers, there's the scene where they do this. It's the steam or fog or whatever it is.
Yeah, and to be fair, the garbage truck scene was pretty violent if you think about it.
Especially as a kid.
I definitely thought that was blood, that there was all this blood coming from the garbage truck.
I love Casey. Just like, oops.
Yeah, that bit. I don't even think I realized how messed up that is until like literally watching it today, seeing Shredder fall. Because I guess I just always thought of Shredder as more of like a monster type character.
Well, you're thinking
actually a human.
Of the second film. You definitely could think that. We'll get there. Let's get to that finale. But first, let's talk about how this film is framed and set up. The best way to say this is probably that April O'Neil, while introduced minutes into the film, not initially, but she's used much the same way in the TV show, maybe to lesser effect in the TV show. She's used as an audience surrogate to really introduce you to this world of the Ninja Turtles. So if you're somebody who maybe didn't watch the show, didn't read the comic, you're kind of seeing things through the eyes of April O'Neil. Now, it's a different actress here. It's Judith Hoag that plays April O'Neil in the second one. How do you feel that Judith Hoag did as far as being the audience surrogate for this film and just kind of her general portrayal of April O'Neil? Emily, what do you think?
Judith Hoag is probably my favorite April. She blows it out of the park. Like I think she's amazing, and she looks gorgeous in the movie. Like it's like I when I was a kid, again, I was like, oh, I like the second April more because she was, I guess, more like the cartoon one where she just wasn't as like active. But in this, she's amazing. Like and you really feel like the bond between the Turtles and April in this film. Like she pulls that off very well.
Yeah, I believe she's excellent. As far as April O'Neil's concerned, while she introduces us to these turtles and to this setting, in a way, the city in New York, kind of like it is in Marvel Comics to the Ninja Turtles, it's a character in and of itself. It's very important to...
It reminds me a lot of Ghostbusters, how there's a lot of shots that kind of establish, New York. Although, do you know where this movie was filmed, Brad?
I'm going to say probably Canada.
North Carolina.
You're kidding. Was it?
Dead serious.
Where at?
I don't know exactly, but a lot of the film, a lot of the farm stuff and a lot of the movie in general is filmed in North Carolina. They really just did establishing shots in New York. Most of the movie was filmed in North Carolina.
If there was a gun pointed to my head and I had to answer that, I would have been a dead man. I had no idea. And I love the Ninja Turtles, and I'm a North Carolinian, so
I'm checking that out, but I remember that from the book.
The complete visual
history. Yeah.
Which is a great book, by the way.
That's where I got it.
And Kendall, not only do you have the city of New York, but this whole kind of 80s graffiti type punk style is interjected into this film, or at least kind of how people maybe viewed that style who weren't in it. Like initially, when we sit up the foot, it's almost like a Pinocchio fantasy type land for young children to be drawn in. Just as far as the visual aesthetics of not New York, but just that 80s kind of, I don't want to say gangster, thuggish vibe, but outlaw vibe.
That's what everybody thought the city was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, 90s. That's what you thought the city was like.
Yeah. The other day I visited a here in Columbus called the Old North Arcade, and I was watching it, and my wife sat down, and we came to one of those scenes, and I said, "Hey, are they in the Old North Arcade?" Because I don't know. I mean, I think that it was those scenes were really interesting because it's little, it's like little kids, like legitimately. It's not 25-year-old playing teenagers. It's like there's the 12-year-old smoking a giant cigar in the one shot.
What I thought was crazy is, and I learned this a few years ago. It took me a while before I put two and two together. But that head foot soldier, or not the one who is kind of at the top of the food chain, is Sam Rockwell. Who I don't know if you're familiar with Sam Rockwell. He was in Moon. He was
Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2.
Justin Hammer.
Yeah, that's probably where you
what?
From. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally see it now that you.
And he's in a lot of indie flicks and stuff as well. It's very recognizable. Not A-list, but
he's in Galaxy Quest.
Oh man, I forgot he was in that.
Right, yeah, he's the red shirt, right?
He's the guy who goes regular on menthol.
Yeah, that's right. So I think where this film really kind of sets itself apart is it really hits home that father-son dynamic between Splinter and the Turtles, and it feels authentic, it feels real. What makes that, Emily? I hear you kind of agreeing. So what makes that just really hit home with you? What makes it so authentic?
I mean, like, family is one of my favorite themes in media, and just like the like the scenes where Donatello's like, ever think about not having him, and then like when Raph comes home and he's crying and Splinter puts a hand on his head and says like everything's okay, and then when he's having those talks with Danny about what fatherhood should mean.
I love that.
I love Danny.
Which
call this family, Danny?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that line.
Can I interject something?
Sure.
Yeah.
Raphael is not crying; he's raging, and there's a difference.
No, he's like at that point of the film, I think he wipes away, like Splinter wipes away tears. Like
no, he's had something in his eye. He's had something in his eye.
Oh geez, you guys.
He's brooding.
You guys and your emotions hiding.
He's brooding.
I went back and I didn't watch it for this review. I was so slammed finishing things up at work, but I did watch it last summer. So it's been about a year ago. I watched both. No, I actually watched it after the last Michael Bay film come out.
Yeah.
So I just had to get the taste out of my mouth. Sorry, Kendall.
The scene with like Splinter and the campfire too, with like how much it affects them.
So good.
Like I can't not get emotional watching that scene. It's
I want to get to all that kind of North.
That's some Yoda level stuff right there. I love it. Oh my god.
He's like a Force ghost. Yeah.
Hey, one of the things you mentioned a second ago, Brad, you said about this movie, we were talking about some of the characters and talking about Sam Rockwell, as the head thug. One of the things I really like about this movie is like even every one of the minor characters, like just the people who have a single line or something, some of them are actually the actors who play the Turtles in suits, like the pizza delivery guy.
Oh, that's my favorite part.
The pizza delivery guy, the taxi passenger, when they jump over the taxi, like everybody feels, I don't know, like they feel like a solid character, not just extras. I don't know. There's something about this movie that like I love the delivery of every line, where every character, the boss, April's boss, feels like a decent, well-rounded character for as much as we see of them. So it just feels like there's so much more going on in this movie than most other movies of this type.
I want to get back to that theme of family really quick. I think not only do you have that between the Turtles and Splinter, but we see that family dynamic kind of expanded through Casey, through April, through Danny eventually, as we mentioned. And you almost feel like, I know this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but you feel like you're becoming part of that family with them as you experience these things. One of the smallest things and the littlest stuff can make me tear up, I'm not going to lie, that gets me every time I watch this film is when kind of Danny's had that epiphany, and he helps Casey get into kind of the foot layer at the time, and they break things, kind of going the shit there. We're building toward the climax of the film, and Casey and Danny get Splinter out, and it's a very simple line, but I don't know why it always hits home with me. It's like, you can trust him. He's a friend. And these friendships are subtly established, but they just feel so authentic to me. And that may just be my emotional attachment to this film coming through there, but I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
I agree.
Well, they do a really good job because of the time they spend on the farm. They do a really good job really solidifying and earning the relationship between the turtles and Casey and April. And also, Casey has heard about Splinter, so Casey knows what's going on with Splinter. So even though it's Danny and Casey rescuing Splinter, three people who don't really know each other, in a lot of movies that would not feel earned. That would feel like they just ran these random people that don't know each other suddenly are best buds. But in this film, it does work. I do want to jump back to the pizza delivery scene.
That's fine. Jump back and forth. It's fine.
Yeah. So this scene, I thought it was funny as a kid. As an adult who has worked a lot of crappy jobs in my life, it's a pretty bad message. You should always pay full price for your pizza and tip well.
Yeah, that doesn't age well.
I still think it's funny. I'm sorry, Kendall. And I've worked bad jobs. But maybe
I'm also it really bugs me. I mean, I don't know if I'm assuming that like it was literally, because this is Domino's, so it was like literally product placement, and they said, and then it's $3 off. So I'm wondering if that was actually a promotion that Domino's had.
A lot of places back in the 80s and even the early 90s did have things that if the pizza wasn't there in a certain period of time, it was free or half off or something like that. But they actually stopped doing it because a lot of drivers were getting in accidents.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes sense.
And also I also like knowing how businesses are run. Like, I almost wonder if if that driver had to cover the difference from his tips. From his tips for the night.
That's the kind of stuff that keeps us awake at night, Kendall, on the Technodrome Tales podcast. Let's jump back to Splinter and Shredder and how that dynamic is established here.
Can I say something about the farm real quick?
Oh no, we're gonna get there, Jerry. Don't worry.
We're not there yet. We already were there. And we left.
We're jumping.
Well,
we're coming back.
I'm not doing this like chronological order like they would do on Teenagers with Attitude.
This was about specifically the building the relationships between the characters.
Go ahead.
April's narration when she talks about how all the turtles are handling the loss of Splinter, or Splinter being missing and Raph being in the whatever you call it, a coma or a knocked out state. When she is doing that narration and drawing the pictures of the turtles, that is such an emotional scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeing how the turtles are coping with this. I mean, again, you're building those relationships through that narration and seeing those images, but you are also, I mean, really just having a cool way of building April's character as a reporter too. Even when there's not really something like to report, she's still telling a story through her words and the pictures that she draws.
This is one of probably the only times in my life that I felt like the turtles were real people through that narration. And that, out of all the history of the TMNT and all the epic stuff that's involved, they are really humanized there. And number two, I would give anything to have one of those paintings framed, the originals.
Yeah.
I hope the people that worked on the film, Eastman Laird, got to take those home and they weren't lost. All the Northampton stuff, the farm stuff is great. Did they go there in the 84 comic, Jerry? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, they did. Okay, they did go there in the 84 comic. This was my first experience seeing them at Northampton. It's something that's happened on the Nick show. It's something that's happened on the new IDW comic. And when I think of Northampton, I mean, this is my first experience with it. This is what I think of. I think these, as Jerry has already said, are the strongest points of this film and what set it apart from being some type of generic kid show to live action adaptation. Just that moment when Raph comes to and they're kind of like, we got to go to work. We got to start training.
Eat. He wants to eat. Like, that's such.
He wants some food. Get him some food.
I love that.
So good. I quote that like almost every day when I'm hungry. and Brad, you brought up an interesting question about the comics and whether it was in it. Every story beat in this movie is from the comics. Every single story beat, like Raph getting beat up by foot soldiers and getting thrown through a window. It happens to Leo in the comics, but it happens. Going to New Hampshire, it's Casey's place, but it happens in New Hampton, whatever. Sorry. Them running away from April's house catching on fire. It happens in the comics. The rooftop fight at the end, you guys know, happens in the comics. Like, everything from that movie is from the comics. The only thing taken from the cartoon is pizza and April being a reporter.
Yeah. And the whole second time around, the antique shop too. I think that's.
And I got the colored bandanas too. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think there's some tone that gets taken a little bit. I think this sort of bridges the gap between the tone of the TV show and
the tone too. Sure.
I would say it's more comics than TV show, but it definitely balances the two so well. And it kind of creates kind of what we would remember as for most of us, I think, the definitive version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But going back to the dynamic set up between Splinter and Shredder and kind of how the Turtles are caught in the middle, I like this incarnation of the origin story of Splinter and the rivalry between Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki a lot better, where it talks about Splinter mimicking the moves of his master from his cage, and you see the little rat and all that stuff. Now, I realize you can't have the whole retro mutagen storyline like we broke down in the first season, but there's something that just makes it, I don't want to say more real, because that's definitely not the correct way to phrase it. There's something that makes it more authentic that he was an animal, much like the Turtles as well, as opposed to being a man at one point. Do you guys like this?
You mean you didn't prefer that he not be Japanese at all and learn karate from a picture book that a kid dropped into the sewer?
No, I didn't prefer that, but I don't think it was much of a contest between the two. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm down with this origin, and again, that's from the comics as well. It is a little bit more ridiculous, just because a rat learned not only ninjutsu, but the philosophies of ninjutsu. So, like, it's a little bit more ridiculous, but that's fine, because Turtles is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the right kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
It works. I mean, there's a fantasy element here, and, you know, you just buy into it.
It's comic book logic, but it's still logic, where he got pinned to a wall so he couldn't bend down, so he got sent to America. Seems.
What's this?
That
a knife?
Seems a little more. Yeah, like that seems a little more like it didn't make a lot of. I don't know. It's just that's the wrong kind of weird. And yeah, so I always like it when you have an origin story like this one.
2014.
Also, I really like that he attacks Oroku Saki when he's still just a regular rat.
Yeah.
And then Oroku Saki slices off his ear.
That's so crazy. Yeah.
Like,
Love it.
it's ridiculous and awesome. And I mean, it also,
I like it.
You know, the other thing about it is at that point, Splinter was not smart. Like he was just a rat. Like they make a point that he didn't really start to learn things until he was mutated. So maybe like half that story he's just making up.
We may never know. One thing I want to point out here is Shredder. Dude's scary as hell in this movie, especially as a young child. And
absolutely, the cape.
Oh, just that scene where and they did a good job I can't go a podcast without mentioning Mondo, but where he walks, they did a good job capturing on the original Jeff Proctor TMNT Mondo poster. That scene where he walks in, it's like, dun, 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 and his music hits and he's addressing kind of the kids who are wanting to join the Foot Clan, and they're doing the whole head bandana ceremony. That's when you really tell a difference that, yes, this isn't the cartoon version of the character. This guy's to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's think about it. The guy is wearing purple, sparkly pajamas, and he makes it look really intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the eyes, the actor's eyes are phenomenal in building this character, especially if you've only ever had seen, the cartoon where Shredder kind of got, sillier and sillier, more into, Cobra Commander, Skeletor, territory and stuff. The actor is James Sato.
I just looked that up. He's 62 years old. Still doing a little acting. The way that this film ends, as far as the finale with the fight with the Foot in the city from the sewer to the top of the roof and the whole stuff with Casey and Danny rescuing Splinter, and it kind of all meets to a heads on the rooftop of New York City. Everything is earned here. When I say everything, I mean the best parts as far as the finale are concerned are not the fighting, although that's great. It is the raw emotion that you see through the turtles' suits and the voice acting of them displaying their love for Splinter through how fiercely they're fighting Shredder, who they are obviously overmatched by, and just that fierceness and ferociousness that they attack him with is so raw and emotional. I don't know. I just love that rooftop scene when it's the guys versus the Shredder.
They still decide to attack him one at a time for some reason.
They do that.
It maybe doesn't make much sense, but storytelling wise and in the moment, it works.
So I will say that most of what I know about martial arts I learned from Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers. And there is an episode of the first season of the Power Rangers where Trini is learning I can't remember which martial arts it is.
I think it's Taekwondo.
Didn't she use she used Mantis style, right? Though
it was fake. It wasn't
Mantis
a real
style.
Bro, yeah.
I mean, Mantis style is a real thing, but
yes.
the thing she did wasn't real.
like hip hop Kado,
Well, no,
Yeah.
Because I actually did, after I saw that, because the Teenagers with Attitude were pretty negative on that episode, and I actually did a little bit of research about what they were saying she was doing, and it was not perfectly in line, but it's close. They were closer to it. But one of the sort of things about that was that you have to it has to be a fair fight. It has to be one be the same equal numbers on each side, or else it's not honorable. And especially because they made the point of, when you die, it will be without honor and all that. I mean, I guess it could make sense why they're fighting one at a time for that, that sort of chivalry, ninjutsu rules and stuff.
Ninjas are supposed to fight dirty, and that's how we beat them in the comics. By the way, is they go all at once, and they just overwhelm them. So
Emily mentioned that Leo's her favorite turtle. Donatello is my favorite. I really like how, while everybody's upset with the reaction at the end that Shredder gives when that the turtles have
so good, that line.
Over Shredder's lie that he killed the rat, and it's like, you lie! And he just charges him, and it's like, he's the oldest brother, he's the leader, and he gives it everything he's got. And then when, of course, the Shredder has that sharp object. It wasn't a knife. It was like some kind of sharp stick. I don't know.
It's a spear of some kind.
Yeah, spear of some type pointed at Leo, and then the camera pans, and then you see Splinter right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, it's just so epic. And just
he almost has a ghostly presence to him, doesn't he? Like there's something very otherworldly. That wind is blowing.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds. Yeah, it's just such a cool. Such a cool.
Yoda.
I gotta say, it's one of my favorite lines in the movie. The situation that you just said, and like, I just want to repeat it. So, the rat had a name. He had a name. You lie.
I love
it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I took that Leo quote, Emily. I should have let you do it.
It's okay. No, absolutely. I just wanted to add the part of the rat has a name. It had a name. It's such a good part.
Yeah.
I've like quoted that a lot, like, and I changed it around to be what I'm talking about.
So this is another thing that I just picked up on this viewing today. Shredder, even though he has this vendetta against the turtles and the Splinter, he suspects, I think, but he doesn't know where they came from. He doesn't know that was Amato Yoshi's rat, and like it's like a little thing, but like he doesn't, and then that also makes sense why he loses his temper and makes a mistake attacking Splinter. It's just a really it makes more sense in context if you think of it that way. If like he realizes that the guy that scarred him is standing right in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Shredder say something to the effect of "you fight well in the old style"?
Yeah.
And earlier,
I think so.
Yeah.
His right hand man is asking him what's wrong.
Tatsu, who I wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man!
But I think the line Shredder said, and something may not be perfect, but he goes like, "The fighting style, something familiar from the past."
That's it.
It's like that's the exact
he says, I noticed something, a presence I haven't felt since.
No, that's not it. That's Obi-Wan. Too many Star Wars.
Did I get it wrong? I didn't know.
Too many Star Wars nerds on this podcast, Kendall, to pull.
I mean, it's like the turtles are basically Luke Skywalker in this movie. I mean, it's a very.
Yeah, kind of in a way. Tatsu. This is correct me if I'm wrong. This is the only incarnation he comes up in. This in the second film.
I don't remember him from anything else.
He is in the second film.
It's kind of cool to see Shredder have a semi-competent right-hand man or assistant where Bebop and Rocksteady are bumbling idiots.
He's in the new comics, though, right? Doesn't he appear?
I've read the
new
first
series?
12 volumes, 10 volumes, not 12, and I hadn't seen him yet. I wish he was. I love Tatsu. Did they ever make a toy of Tatsu, Jerry?
Probably.
No, because I would own it.
I don't think they did.
Oh, well,
that's
there you
one
go,
of the.
then.
Now, in the new series, there is a guy named Hattori Tatsu.
In the Nick
He's
show?
a masked swordsman. Yeah, the new series.
Okay. I did not know that. What do you guys think about the poster for this film? Just where you have the city up top and the turtles are peeking out, the theatrical poster.
Hey,
Real
dude,
good.
this is no cartoon. That's what it said.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I had that framed as a kid in my room.
You should have it framed in your house now, Jerry.
I need to. I wonder what happened to it, my old poster. So I'll have to look for
It
it.
also said lean, green, and on the screen everywhere.
Yeah.
At the bottom. Of the
Jumping
poster.
back real fast to Tinkerbell.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Tinkerbell.
So one of my favorite little moments in this film, because I mean we keep coming back to it. There's all these moments is what that's one of the thing that makes this film. When it's the arcade scene and the kid runs into him and he kind of like stiffens up like he's gonna attack and he says, "Go play," and he like does his fingers like run and play.
That's so cool.
I like that moment a lot. Also, it's kind of telling of like he knows that he has to play this role. Obviously he wasn't trained in ninja school to be a babysitter, but also he's doing the job.
You know what it reminds me of? As a teacher, when it's like 2 or 3 days left in school, as a high school teacher, and you're just like, yeah, it's school, but it's the end. Go play. All right.
Whatever. We're done with the movie.
That's true. And as a teacher, you are brainwashing kids to be weapons of society, right? Something like that.
It depends on how you teach them.
That metaphor got away from me. Got away from me.
So basically, ringing the bell is the equivalent of yelling "Ninja vanish." Like, all right,
Yeah.
get out of here, kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kendall made such a brilliant point there subtly about this being a film about moments. If you describe, and I love Teenagers with Attitude, and I like War and Beast. But I hadn't listened to as much of War and Beast, in all honesty, Emily and Kendall.
Teenagers with Attitude is a podcast?
Yeah, it's a Power Rangers podcast.
Sorry, I thought you meant just in general you enjoy Teenagers with Attitude.
Yeah.
I'm a high school teacher, and I don't enjoy that. But
I was going to say, that seems a little odd.
Like they will almost in a way, and they do it in a very entertaining fashion. They have me dying sometimes, rolling on the floor laughing. But they'll kind of go through and they'll tell you what happened in the film and break down the plot thread by thread, in some cases line by line. If you were kind of describing the plot of this film, reporter discovers these mutated creatures in New York City. They fight this group of evil foot ninjas. They win. Obviously, I'm being, very straight to the point there. But if you're just describing the structure of this film, it doesn't sound that good. But it's all the little moments and emotional threads and character threads, if you love these characters like all of us here do, that make this an epic film instead of some generic cash grab cartoon live action adaptation that it could have been. This could have been a piece of crap movie and it wouldn't have endeared like it did with us, but it would have made a ton of money probably.
It also could have been a crappy movie and still people would revisit it constantly just for sheer nostalgia.
That's true.
I mean, I've seen the third movie almost as many times as I've seen this movie. So
it's pretty bad.
That's true.
Yeah, I love this film. I mean, normally if we were doing a film podcast, I'd be like, go through and rate it. But I think we'd all say it's an epic 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 film.
I would give it 9.95.
Is that what y'all give stuff on War and Beast?
That's a line from the movie.
Is it?
It's a song from the movie.
I should have
I was waiting the whole podcast for that joke, and you guys just.
It was just your.
I'd actually give it a 10.
But somebody says 9.95. One of the turtles says 9.95 when the Casey and April kiss.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about Casey real quick, because I don't think we gave him the proper attention on this podcast. Jerry, you're the biggest Casey Jones fan that I personally know, and I know there's a lot out there, and we probably all love Casey Jones. But Jerry, how about this portrayal of Casey Jones, and it's done by Elias Koteas? Is that how you pronounce it, Jerry?
I guess so. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say his name. I've seen him in a lot of other movies. So.
Yeah. But what about this portrayal do you love so much?
Oh my gosh, the thing I like about, you know, I mean, in the original comic, Casey Jones is pretty unhinged.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty out there. But what I really like about this portrayal is, I mean, Casey Jones is still pretty unhinged, but you can tell he's not just a madman. I mean, he's really somebody who is, you know, trying to do the vigilante thing. You get that he wants to do the right thing. He's just not the nicest person or the most congenial, so to speak. And it's really cool to me how he kind of falls in with the Turtles, that he ends up getting involved in this whole situation. I like how him and Raph have this rivalry. You know, they kind of start this rivalry of, I mean, both of them are really pretty similar in a lot of ways. They both have a temper. They're both hotheads. They both kind of, you know, are lone wolves who want to do their own thing. But you have them eventually, you know, joining up, and then in Raph's absence, you know, Casey's kind of there working along with them, sort of, you know, mourning alongside them as well, or, you know, kind of giving them a little bit of that impulsiveness. So,
and this Casey isn't like a Clint Eastwood sounding madman sociopath like he is in the cartoon series as well. I could gush about this film all night. I love it. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's confirmed epic by me. Is there anything else that you guys are really wanting to say about the film before we wrap up this episode?
Sorry.
I want to say a lot. All right, let's go.
Jump in there.
Guess first. Emily, you go ahead.
Just to compound on what Jerry was saying. That again, that's from the comic where like Raph is like he gets a hothead. He runs off and he runs into Casey, and he sees himself in Casey and tries to calm him down, and he learns like a little bit about himself doing that, and then they fight, but they eventually become friends. So it pretty much happens like that in the movie, except like not right away because he runs away and says, "Damn." But yeah, other than that, Ninja Turtles as a property, just to talk about that a bit, is really important to me. And as someone who wants to draw comic books, it's the largest success story in independent comics history.
Yeah.
Like, it was just two guys drawing on a table. They called themselves Mirage Studios because they didn't have a studio. And this film was like a huge, huge thing. That this little tiny comic that was drawn on a kitchen table got this huge film that was one of the highest grossing independent film of all time for at least a long time. I'm not sure. It might have been overstepped now.
I think it's the second now.
What's number one? Do you know, Jerry, what number one is?
I don't. I'll happily look it up.
A little movie called Star Wars: The Force Awakens. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, independent. But yeah, it's a very inspiring story. Like both the movies.
Right, Blair Witch Project is my guess. Blair Witch Project.
Okay,
that's my guess.
The movie's plot and the story behind the movie is just incredibly inspiring. And it's like I said, it's my two favorite movies are this movie and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I'll always love this movie, and I when earlier when Jerry was saying like I'm not going to try to say it's a classic, it is. It's an amazing film. I don't care what anyone says. It's probably one of the best films of like its decade. I love it.
It's not even. I'm looking at the top independent films of all time via the Hollywood Reporter. It's not even in the top 10. I'm gonna give y'all the rundown real quick. 10 is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. 9's Pulp Fiction. 8's Fahrenheit 9/11. Good Will Hunting at 7. Juno at 6. Blair Witch Jerry at 5. Shakespeare in Love at 4. My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I would have never guessed this is an independent film, but that was Slumdog Millionaire at 2, and number 1's Passion of the Christ.
I guess they released it independently.
Yeah, these are all indies.
Yeah, I think, and if you notice, all of those were from like after 1998. I think that the thing is the way the industry has changed over the years to make a successful indie film. I mean, Passion of the Christ was an independent film, but it was independently made by Mel Gibson, who has all of the money.
Exactly. So it's kind of it's very different when you look at it in that way. Okay, what about Jerry? Final thoughts on this?
Final thoughts on this movie.
Which is a lie because we're going to talk about this movie from now to the end of time. But for this episode,
from now, man, one of my favorite parts of this movie, we didn't even talk about it, is the fact that we got to see Raphael running through the streets in his trench coat. Again, this movie does things so well, and sometimes there are things that, Brad, you've already touched on this, but there are stories or movies that you explain to somebody and you're trying to explain it to them. There's kind of that whole meme that's called like explain a movie badly.
Yeah.
Like you say like, a boy joins a terrorist organization, and kills 1 million people. Well, that's the plot of Star Wars. But you can sometimes explain things really badly, or you can just explain things in general. It doesn't sound like they gel. But this movie, when you're watching it, I mean, it takes all of these random plot elements, and Brad, you're gonna like this. It adds so much heart to it.
It does.
There's a lot of heart here and a lot of stakes too. Plus, there's someone using a bow staff, and people love people using bow staffs.
And it's Corey Feldman.
In it. This movie it's one of those times, I think, that just all of these elements come together just perfectly. That the movie doesn't try to force anything. It doesn't have to do a heavy amount of world building. It just feels so natural. And when you're watching this movie, it's one of those, I don't feel like I question the movie's logic or anything. It's one of those films where I can truly just sit back and enjoy it, and everything just feels natural and right with the world while watching this movie. Like, everything just seems like it makes sense, and it doesn't try to be too big. It doesn't try to have some big, like, crazy finale. Everything just progresses naturally through this film. It has excellent pacing. The tone is just right. I mean, there's enough darkness there that it doesn't feel silly, but it's not like a depressing film to watch or anything. It's still, lots of one-liners and, sort of silly, corny moments in a lovable way.
Unlike the Michael Bay film, which is depressing for many different reasons, which leads me to somebody who likes that film, Mr. Kendall Hallman. Kendall, okay. Final thoughts on this film?
So two thoughts. Both of them are shouldn't be my final thoughts, but just pretend like I said stuff like what Jerry said about the film, because I agree. But okay, so first of all, I chuckled at the closing theme, the TURTLE power. And I wonder how many films from the late 80s and the early 90s had a closing theme that the song just described the entire plot of the movie. I feel like that was
Addams Family. That's another one.
And Spaceballs had it.
Spaceballs does.
So
Coming to America.
Yeah, so
we don't have to name them all
trend.
off.
Yeah, we don't have to name everyone, but it definitely was a trend. I'm not crazy. Good. And then the other thing is when they're describing the
Goonies.
when they're describing the origin story, every time there's a flashback to Japan, I feel like I'm watching Power Rangers and it's cutting to the Sentai footage because I think it's because they did stop motion for the for Splinter as a rat, but the film gets like super grainy all of a sudden.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it has a very different feel to it, like you're watching an old karate movie.
Yeah, which is I don't know if it was intentional or not. It totally works. It totally has that perfect blend of actually working on the surface and also having that like weird nostalgia cheesiness, like you cut from from that to like a really, really, really clear picture of whoever's narrating with a black background. It's
Yeah.
great.
That's another thing about the movie is the set design is beautiful. So well done.
All right.
If there were 3 words, I could use to describe this film, they would be radical, radical, radical. Yeah, she gets it.
For my final thoughts, I'm gonna say I don't think it's an all-time classic cinema-wise. Take something like Taxi Driver. I think we mentioned that on our podcast that we did when we were talking icons of cinema for the 70s, Jerry.
We weren't talking so much as fighting with each other.
Well, fighting with each other on that
Fisticuffs
podcast.
were involved.
So to me, that is a all-time classic that I would probably watch once every 5 years. I would watch this once every 5 hours. This rewatchability to me is kind of the takeaway. I could watch this film so many times, and it has that emotional punch every time. And a lot
Just
of
like Street Fighter.
Yeah, a lot of it's nostalgia, but not all of it. Guys, that's going to wrap up episode 6 of the Technodrome Tales. Tell us where people can find more of you on the internet, Emily.
You can find my aforementioned art, because I'm a comic book artist, at dangerchair.tumblr.com, on my Twitter at This Is Emeralds, and my Instagram at This Is Emerald. And I also do a YouTube gameplay channel, which is This Is Emerald.
So check out the This Is Emerald YouTube channel for some epic content. Jerry Reed, where can people find more of you?
You can find more of me at actionfigurebarbecue.com and an 8th. Just kidding. Just actionfigurebarbecue.com.
All right. What about you, Mr. Kendall Holland?
I am at KendallCast. You can go to kendallcast.ninja and see all of my projects. I just put a little blog entry there about Super Mario World.
As for me, you can find me at thegww.com. This was a presentation, a proud presentation of the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network, the Epic Review, epicreview.com, and at Twitter at The Real Brad Bell, the REEL Brad Bell. And Jerry, take us out, my friend.
Ninja, vanish.